You've probably heard of the political compass test before. A lot of people have taken this test online, a lot of celebrities, a lot of people who are into politics. There's also a lot of people who criticize the test and say, well, there's problems with it, there's a lot of generalizations, what are these types of questions? But hey, it's politics. How do you expect to make anybody happy? Everybody's got a voice, right? That's what we're told. So, I'm going to look at this test and I'm going to give a unique perspective, probably one you're not going to see anywhere else online, because yes, this political compass test has been out for about 21 years and a lot has changed over the last 21 years, but I get what this site is trying to do. They're trying to appeal and understand what political sides, what they believe in. But I'm afraid there's something more that is essential to all politics that this political compass test is just completely missing. And so we're going to go over each question and we're going to see the problems here within this test. Now, like I said, there's other people who have criticized this test before, but I want you to stick around to the very end because you're also going to see a different type of political compass test that a lot of people are unaware of. Now, it's not even really a test, although all life is a test. It's actually the real political compass, one that accurately demonstrates how political sides actually operate. So let's first look at this test, the test that most people are familiar with. When you look up political compass, this is the website you get, politicalcompass.org. Okay, so we're just going to go through each one. Let's just jump right into it. Okay, this is page 1 out of 6. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interest of transnational corporations. In the 21st century, it's pretty much inevitable that the world is connected. And when it says the word should, however, in this test, it's assuming that people themselves get to decide how such a global world would operate, even though it is to the point where everybody is connected. And it says if economic globalization is inevitable. I don't know what it means by that, okay, because again, it's very general. Like, what do they mean? A world currency? But everybody generally, produces and people are generally trading. You have all these different practices existing, and should not people have the ability to decide what they want to do with their own money and what they want to do with their own property? This whole question is assuming that somebody gets to decide how everybody else should make economic decisions. It says it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of corporations. What are those corporations doing? Likely they were founded to help humanity, or maybe they were founded to make money, or maybe both. Are the two not related? Transnational corporations, it sounds like a bad thing, right? It should serve humanity. Of course, what should not serve humanity? Okay, next question. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. Again, this is a problem here. I'd always support my country. So this is sort of patriotism without understanding your own judgment of right and wrong. Like, I'm going to follow it even if it's right or wrong. That's obviously not right, and somebody shouldn't follow somebody. If somebody tells them to jump off a cliff, why should they be like, okay, I'm going to do it because you said so? They should think for themselves. This is how we have democide in World War II, where you had so many people supporting these big governments who were saying do this, do that, and everybody just followed orders without thinking for themselves if it was right or wrong. That is statism, something that a lot of people are unaware of. And right and wrong is something that I think is very contradictory to supporting your country to begin with, because that means you're supporting morals, not legality. That's morality instead of legality. If you don't follow the commands of a political authority, what are they going to do to you? Well, you're going to be in prison, they're going to go after you. That is actually fear, that's compliance right there. That has nothing to do with right or wrong. It has to do with legal or illegal, if you're following their system or not. They're totally different things here. We can't support my country with right or wrong. Because if you're looking at right or wrong or morality, you're looking at a human cause, because we all share that ability to make that decision. So if you're looking at just one country, this part of borders and land that we call this country, how could we compare that with right or wrong? That person who's following that country, like, is saying, I'm doing my duty, I'm a patriot, is not thinking for themselves. I mean, that's exactly how you had World War II with a lot of the big countries that caused a whole bunch of democide, which is the #1 cause of unnatural death. They didn't think for themselves if what they're doing was right or wrong. They just followed the commands of their political authority, which they proclaimed has an authority. Again, some people deciding for everybody else how things should be done. You're going to see this as a common chain. The next question says, no one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. This is a personal bias. And, why not have people have opinions of their own on this matter? If somebody's proud of their culture or not, and, maybe they're proud of merging with other cultures. I mean, what have you? Let people be free. Why should I be the one to say, disagree, or agree with this statement? I'm trying to decide for everybody else how their mind operates. That just doesn't seem right within itself. You understand? Because that is a moral issue within itself, is the fact that I get to decide for everybody else how things should work. And you may say, well, that's democracy. But why should my will be imposed on a fellow man? What makes me any better than fellow man? Do I have a special right that other people do not? What gives me that special right that other people do not? You understand? Because that is not covered in this test, and that is not covered in most political debates, etc. So no one chooses their country of birth. No, not necessarily, but it comes from their parents, so it's foolish to be proud of it. I mean, why not be proud of everything that you have in this life? Why not be grateful of everything? So again, just a contradiction, very generalized. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. I mean, this is just asking for bait, basically. That, they want to look at, well, who really is proud of their kind and wants to be with only their kind and nobody else? What about humankind, the human race? Ever hear of that? What about that? Instead of looking at all the divisions within, maybe all those divisions are what creates these political systems to begin with. So, I might want to say strongly disagree with this, but I'm not going to put anything again, because this is just not true. Yeah, certain races might have some qualities others don't because of their environments and how they grew up in their cultures, who knows? But that doesn't make them any special or have them any more rights than the rest of humanity at a moral foundation, right? The moral foundation is what I'm looking at here. And I treat everybody as humankind. So yes, there's differences with everybody. That's beautiful. That's what makes us unique. But there's also something we all share. That is our humanity. That is our rights. We're all created with the same rights by God, by nature, however you see it. Natural law. That's a topic I talk about a lot on my channel. So compared with other races, like, what are we talking about? Aliens? Like comparing ourselves to other humans and saying, well, they're inferior to us, or they don't have this. It's like superior means that you're above them. No, we're all in the same world of existence. That's reality. Okay, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Again, a very generalized statement. Like, you don't know who that person is. If you're going to say that, they're your friend, you should probably know who they are. And your enemy, why are they your enemy? What makes them your enemy? Why should you have any enemies? This is the question to ask. But again, they want a very clear disagree or agree answer. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. So I get to decide how I get to lead all the troops and tell them where to go fight people that they don't even know across the world. Military action that defies international law. What is international law? What is man's law to begin with? It's not timeless. It's not universal, right? I don't know what that is. It's not something that the whole world actually shares, even though it's international. It's written down on a piece of paper. It's a fancy piece of paper that people have to obey. And if they don't obey, what happens? That is what man's law is. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, all man's law is not justified. Okay, and military action alone, who likes war? Who likes military? Why is there a reason for action? You say that's sometimes justified. For what? And so that calls for now bringing people and telling them to follow orders for your command, for your will to be imposed. Since when is war a good idea ever? Even if it's for some sort of cause that you think is justified. Well, now you're going to expand your borders, create this whole new government, disrupt the people there, and claim they're all this certain type and we're all this certain type, creating another division. Do you see the problems inherent within that? Next question is, there is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. What type of question is this? I might as well start asking anything. A worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Like, there's going to be always entertainment and there's going to be information. Well, knowledge really helps people with a lot of things, especially about morality, which doesn't often get talked about, especially in politics. A worrying fusion. You're going to get information and entertainment, and you're going to get entertainment and information. What do you think people do when they're looking at politics? They're like, this is a sports game. I like watching this team fight this team. It's entertainment for them. They like that. These two are interlinked. I mean, if people aren't entertained by the information, they're probably not even going to pay attention. And, you know, the same thing with entertainment. If there's no knowledge put behind it, or passion, a great amount of, in-depth feeling behind it, it's not going to have enough strength to hold it. You see, people are like, why are these movies nowadays just not that good anymore? Why is music not good anymore? And they start questioning how things are changing over time. It's because the information and the entertainment are alongside. That's why. So a worrying fusion, this is a fusion that's always been going on. It's literally the mind and the heart. That's entertainment, and there's no problem with either one. So if it wants me to put disagree for this, well, again, I am not going to put an answer, because it's not worrying, but also it can be worrying if people are just looking at entertainment as their source of information. It depends. But again, is there a depends answer? No. But if there was a depends answer, it would mean that you see both sides. You see every angle to which why everything exists, but you realize you should not impose your will on others, because that's morally wrong. People are ultimately divided by class more than by nationality. Class versus nationality. Well, why do we have the class system? That within itself is questionable. Okay, people are divided, period, when there exists this ability to have classes, because then you have peasants, and you have slaves, and you have kings, and you have priests. This system has always existed for 6,000 years. That's not always, but it's been for quite a long time, as long as we play these political games. And nationality, well, that's just where you're born. Isn't that just where you basically reside? So what do you mean divided by class and nationality? What's going on here? Ultimately divided more by class. But again, you know, nationality people can be divided by, because that's government created. That's these people creating borders and saying this is this land and this is this land. It's all man-made anyways, the classes and the nationalities. The answer is both. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Are the two also not hand in hand here? It's like they're asking the same question over and over again. Two polarities that both make sense in different times and places. So again, and why should I decide for everybody else how things should work? Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment. They require regulation. What is regulation but men telling other men how to live their own lives? And you say, well, this is necessary for the greater good, so violence is necessary to solve problems, because again, it's me imposing my will on others and saying, well, you have to follow my orders or else this will happen to you, whether it's the person I'm telling them to do for my bidding, or the person who has to follow my commands. Either one, right? The policeman or the person who is being coerced by the policeman, they both have to follow my orders because of my authority. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. This again is just another bait question, because everybody should work together just so much as everybody should also have a sense of independence. You have to find that. You have to find that, and accordingly to your environment, because people generally own themselves. That's why this, phrase was created, but it's probably created also to control people if, politics is still saying how people should live each other's lives. The freer the market, the freer the people. If anything says freedom equals freedom, yeah, that makes sense. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled branded consumer product. Then why do people buy it? Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Again, land, it's going to be something that people are going to hoard over and stuff. It's a disagree, it's an agree, it's both. Like, it's a reason why it's commonly disputed, because, well, if you settle on the land and you put your fruits of your labor into that land, it's like, oh, is it yours or is it not? What decides if it's yours or not? This fancy piece of paper? No, the law shouldn't decide how the land should be bought or sold at all. So if there was an option that said, don't have the government get involved at all, then I would pick it. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. Sounds a lot like politics and politicians who all they do is gain money off of stealing other people's money. Okay, so it's regrettable that many people's fortunes are made by other people. It depends on the circumstance, it depends on where you are. It's like many personal fortunes are made by people and their society. It's like, this is all super generalized. And this is, again, the problem with this test. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I'm pretty sure that's taxes, right? Is that taxes? Okay, anything that involves the government, again, it's not necessary. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Okay, well, it depends. It's like, well, do they want to deliver a good product to people or a profit to their shareholders who also believe in their product or are trying to gain money themselves? Like, what are we looking at? This is too many factors involved. Like, the only social responsibility. Like, what do you mean? They have many responsibilities. They have plenty. So, and if people are willing to support them, they're probably willing to support them for a reason, and they have to get that money from somewhere else. How are they getting that money? The rich are too highly taxed. Nobody should be taxed. Strongly disagree. Those with the ability to pay should have should have access to higher standards of medical care. That is just natural, because if somebody has more money or the ability to obtain more of what they want, then they're going to do it. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Government should do nothing. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator. Okay, again, that's not freedom. If there's any restriction, that's not freedom, by definition. Okay. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. Again, illegal, government term. Don't care. All authority should be questioned. Of course. Why shouldn't it be? Is anybody born with an innate authority that makes it so? What gives somebody the right to rule? Where does somebody acquire such a moral right? Okay, do they have any more rights than you as a human being? So what gives them that right to rule? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Okay, this is some old-fashioned ancient quote stuff I guess we got going, like some beginning law texts of the Sumerian Empire, the first government, also the first form of systemic slavery. An eye for an eye. Like, what are we in medieval times? It depends, right? It depends. It's reciprocal. Justice is reciprocal. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. What? Taxpayers. Why are they paying taxes to begin with? That means that they're being complied and coerced into paying their own property to somebody else who claims to rule over their own property. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Nothing should be compulsory, otherwise you're not free. Hello? You're a slave. All people have the rights, but it's better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Again, this is a baiting question, trying to make you look divisive, trying to create that division. All people have their rights. True. But it's better. No, not true. It's like, what are they talking about? That they're asking for division. We're all human beings, all born with the same rights. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Again, this is so specific now. Like, we go from super generalized to super specific. Like, this is a certain action done by certain people. Like, why is this a relevant question anyways to politics or anything? Why should I decide how parents should treat their children? Because that's not the only thing they can do. They don't have to resort to violence. They can do other things. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Yeah, is it not natural for them to do so? What do you want me to say? It's unnatural for them to keep secrets? That happens. It doesn't mean that they should or that they shouldn't. It means that it is natural, yes. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Okay, yes, because obviously anything that's criminal is against the government, and that is something that means that you are free, so we want freedom. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Jobs infers that there's a system of economic dependence, and again, you know, when you're in the natural world, you don't have to worry about this thing called jobs. When people refer to jobs, they're like, this is the daily grind, this is what I gotta go for, but like, yeah, a third of it is going to the government due to taxes. It's an issue. So, and it could be even more than that in different places, right? I mean, they're taking people's salaries, they're taking their property, ultimately, what people are earning. So when we say the word job, though, we're saying, well, this is their duty. This is what they have to do in life. They have to make money. They have to do this. No, they have to provide for their family. They have to live life. They have to have fun. There's many things. So it's not the prime function of schooling. Schooling should be for knowledge, and knowledge doesn't necessarily lead people toward jobs. It leads people toward innovation, changing the world, you know, moral changes. Again, politics doesn't answer that. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Again, saying that they should or should not proclaims that I get to decide how everything should work for people. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Okay, well, discipline is something everybody has to learn. What do you mean it's the most important? There are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. Okay, there's only different peoples. What do you mean different cultures? There's all different types of people, different cultures, different foods. There's so many things to look at. That's not the only thing. So again, it's like they're saying no and then they're saying only. So they're trying to make it to where it's like I have to say disagree or agree, and I don't want to answer it. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. If in the sense that people have to, you know, work for what they want in this life, that goes for anything, and they can't just sit back and expect everybody else to help them. But at the same time, people should help them and motivate them and inspire them and provide them with something. You know, it's like it takes a little bit of money to make some money. That's kind of how it works in this life a lot of the time. So again, you can't disagree, can't agree. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. It's better not to think about it, but to keep busy. You have to address the problem. Otherwise, that problem is not going to get fixed. But you also do want to probably keep yourself busy in the case that maybe you have to, have faith in the sense of getting rid of those things that you cannot deal with right away, those things that you cannot fix right away, things that perhaps you're waiting on other people to happen. That's the whole purpose of faith. You know, you have your reason and then you have your faith. Now, faith does not necessarily rely on religion. I'm saying it could be anything, a spiritual practice, what have you, something that keeps you going, something that keeps you on your path of reason. First-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. What does this mean? Their country, their new country refers to a government. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Making such a claim, a very generalized claim, saying this is what it is, and it can't be any other way. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. People can get their funding however they wish. It's up to them to decide. It's their business. It's their doings. And again, if it's not right, people will hold them accountable. Justice is reciprocal. You don't think people are going to speak up when things are going wrong? People are unlikely to speak up because of the political authorities, because they're always so reliant on the cops or the law enforcement to do all such work for them, that they don't want to be the natural law enforcement. They don't want to uphold morality themselves. They don't want to be the ones to defend their own property. Right? They want to put it in other people's hands, their own responsibilities, their own rights, but can they actually do that if their rights belong with them? Otherwise, again, what's happening now? Is what's happening slavery or mental slavery, where the slave wants to be a slave and says, here, do this for me. And hey, if it's voluntary, it's a little different, isn't it? It's not so much slavery if it's voluntary. But if somebody still gets to rule over your life and claim ownership over things that only you can truly control, then you have to be fully aware of what's going on in that transaction. Otherwise, you'll make yourself out to be a slave. Of course, if you can escape that, then you're not a slave. Our civil liberties are being successfully curbed in the name of counterterrorism. These are terms just all made by government. And for it to say civil liberties implies that it's not natural, so that's just a whole issue within itself. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress. Again, there's problems with everything within a state to begin with. It implies monopolies on violence. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. True. I mean, it depends. Surveillance is for many purposes. It can help, yes, with crime, absolutely. It can help with pretty much everything. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. It should be an option, it should, meaning that I get to decide how everything should work, which is obviously not right. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. That is government. But yeah, the death penalty thing, if you say that's an option in the free world, of course it's always going to exist, but it's usually implying, like in this case, that it's coming from government. That's a penalty. A penalty means you did something. A crime assumes that you broke a law, not that it's actually moral or immoral. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Who am I to say how art should be interpreted? In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. It depends, right? I mean, depending on the different act, and it depends on different places and stuff where people want to handle out their different disputes. The state doesn't have to be the mom that says, okay, everything, this is what happens to everybody, because that's what the state wants to do. Everything is just as important. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. I mean, you can help a lot of people potentially. It doesn't have to be a waste of time. That's a bad mindset to begin with. The business person and manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. They work together. They're just as important as each other. Again, like, why do they want me to pick? Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Again, it's trying to bait, and equally so, they can decide what they want to do with their own life. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources. Probably, who knows? You know, what company are we talking about? I have no clue. But again, that's human accountability. It doesn't have to be governments making crazy regulations and forcing people by violence to do certain things. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. It has nothing to do with maturity. It has to do with obedience. Okay, that has to do with statism. Astrology accurately explains many things. Okay, what type of question is this? We use it, don't we? It doesn't matter. You cannot be moral without being religious. Like, morals, everybody has morals, even if you're not religious. So it's just contradictory within itself. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the generally disadvantaged. Yes, because social security is government created. Some people are naturally unlucky. Sure, depending on their circumstances. There's no such thing as luck or chance. These are all just forms through which the environment has manifested through actions. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. If you think it's important, but religions usually refer to mindsets that restrict the mind, and so I would not consider religion a good thing in any case, but it depends on how you take that religion, if you view it as a religion or not, in the same sense that I just described. So again, it depends. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Okay, talking about morality for an issue that they know is not so black and white. So they say usually immoral. Hey, same-sex couple in the stable, because people can decide what they want to do. Same-sex couple in the stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. They can do whatever they want. They're free. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Legal refers to you are free to do it. Yes, that's freedom. What goes on in the private bedroom between two consenting adults is no business of the state. Duh. Do you want a third party on that? No one can feel naturally homosexual. Okay, who am I to say? These days, openness about sex has gone too far. People are going to be open about everything. We're in the internet age. So that's that. You see how every single question has a problem with it. When we're talking about political compasses, the issue is that it relies on this person who's taking the test, thinking for themselves how they think the world should work. Now, why should that one person decide for everybody else how the world should work? Just think about that. And then think, well, let's say they do. Well, how does their will, their way of wanting to do things, get carried out into the world? This is very basic, simple politics. And let me tell you, the answer is violence, and the answer is imposition. The answer ultimately is slavery. Now, if you don't think so, I want you to look over the questions in the political compass test. It uses the word should not, proclaiming that you, the person who's taking the test, has to make the decision for yourself of what you think how the world should operate. Now, how is it that you're going to get the world to operate like that, number one? And number two, why should you decide how the whole world should operate? Number three, the biggest thing here with this test is not only do you see some questions are awfully specific about topics you're like, what is it talking about? Or it's too generalized, but it has polarities. There's times where it says, what about this compared to that? Or this when it comes to this. And it creates this polar condition where if you cannot see both perspectives, you're going to be quick to assume, oh, agree, oh, disagree. But the answer is both, because it depends on the environment, it depends on the person, it depends on their upbringing, and you're going to have bias to your answers based on your upbringing, how you basically have come about in politics and how you've come about in understanding the world around you. That relies on knowledge. So this political compass test is not a test on knowledge, however. It's a test on, well, politics. It's not test on morality or test on, well, how do you view violence and is it legitimate here? Is it legitimate there? Could it ever be legitimate? How does somebody attain a right? What is a right? No. It's not a test asking for your knowledge. It's a test asking how do you want your will imposed upon another fellow human being. It's not a test that really tests you. It's a test that feeds into the paradigm that there's this side left, there's this side right, that there's different factions within the left and right, and you must fall within those coordinates. Now you may say, well, oh, Corey, are you an anarchist? Are you somebody who doesn't like any of that? And I say, well, easy. Do I like any violence? Do I like anybody's will being imposed upon another? The answer is no. Even if you say, well, democracy, what about democracy? Check out my video talking about the American Founding Fathers and their failed form of government, right? Or not even the Founding Fathers, if you don't think that's an accurate representation of democracy. You don't think 6,000 years of experience of governments rising and falling, that we would have found something that works by now? Why is it that nothing works? Is it because everybody has to constantly keep themselves accountable and constantly take these tests and find what way works best and find our way through time, making new political ideologies? Or is the very foundation of political ideologies fundamentally flawed because they're based on violence, because they're based on people's will being imposed upon another human being? Nobody asked the moral questions, but I'm going to put them on the screen for you. I'm going to put 5 questions on the screen for you. Now, if somebody watches my content often, they would see these questions often on my videos. But the reason why I bring them up to you is because it's so important that you address morality when it comes to legality. If you claim that we're all equal in rights, that we were all born with the same rights, then what gives somebody the moral right to rule? What allows them to have more rights than you? Very basic questions. Can you answer it? I'm looking forward to this real test. Now, in addition to this test, I'm going to show you the real political compass, per se. And it's not one that you might be familiar with on politicalcompass.org, not one that has existed for 21 years or that everybody tries using and does so for their political statist games. If you don't know what statism is, it's the most dangerous religion. It's the belief that somebody has the legitimate right to rule over your life and property than you, that somebody essentially gets to rule over you and claim ownership over you and has the right to do so because they're given such a right. But how? Because people believe in it. It's a belief system. That's why it's a religion, and a lot of people believe in it because that's how you create government. Statism creates the state. In order to increase the government and create it, you have to have statism. So if you seek to limit it or reduce it or get rid of it, you have to address statism. A lot of people don't know this, but that's why I'm bringing it to your attention. So check out the questions on the screen, and then I want you to check out the Real Political Compass and hear from Mark Passio, a de-occultist, talk about it a bit more. Now, why is he a de-occultist? Occult simply means hidden. So there's hidden knowledge in this world. Knowledge that the general public does not get to see. Knowledge that people in politics don't talk about because it lives at the very root foundation of our world. And that's not just morality. That's not just natural law or natural rights. It's the very basic functions of human consciousness, the very basic functions of why it is that we are the way we are, how it is that we create the world that we live in. And by knowing that, then we could ultimately change the world. Not through politics, but through education. Because if you keep certain knowledge hidden from people, do you think they'll ever be free? A lot of our founding fathers here in America claimed that education was necessary for freedom. But how many people know about that? How many people understand that? You know, Aristotle made the case that somebody could be a natural slave if they couldn't reason for themselves. They weren't educated enough. A lot of slaves didn't know how to read or write. Is that a justification for people being slaves or for people being enslaved? I don't think so. Do you think so? Do you think anybody should be enslaved? Well, perhaps there is something we have to do in this life, and perhaps it isn't in politics. Perhaps it has to do with education, like I'm doing in this video right now. How else would you have obtained your political views to begin with, if not for education? But maybe there's more education, like I said, that isn't being told to you. That's where occultism comes in. It's not dealing necessarily with ancient traditions and Freemasonry. It doesn't have to. It could be things that are so obvious that we are simply ignoring, things within ourselves that we understand. Take, for example, in World War II, millions of people following the orders to kill millions of people in their governments, in their lands. Why would millions of people follow orders? That means they're suppressing their own conscience. That means they're not thinking for themselves. That means that they're not looking at morality. They're following it because of legality, because of politics. This is the problem with politics, and no political compass test is going to tell you about statism, nor that, which is democide, the #1 cause of unnatural death, nor morality, because these are all interlinked. But that, again, is at the root to all politics. That's what creates the governments, that's what maintains them, etc. So, I hope you watched the end of this video, and I appreciate you for checking out this video. Thank you very much.
Now I'm going to show you a slightly different version that is more accurate. It's a different political spectrum that is ultimately has a place where freedom exists on the spectrum. So this is all the way to the left. You have totalitarianism. And this is the total rule of government over other people. Rule by government over other people. So you have an oligarchical totalitarian faction, whether it be fascist, whether it be communist, whether it be based in Nazism. It doesn't make a difference what bullshit religion it's based in. Totalitarianism is based in some sick fucking religious governmental belief. And it has taken many forms over the centuries. But it's ultimately directed and ruled by social engineers and the dark occult. And then as you go a little bit to the right, you have less control and a little bit more freedom. So there's a little bit more freedom in a socialist regime than there is in a complete totalitarian regime. A little bit more freedom in a democratic regime than there is in a socialist one. That's why they say they want democratic socialism. They want to push the line toward the left and move from what they call democracy to socialism. As you go toward the middle, you have this moderate approach that is somewhere in between. It's just basically confusion. You don't know whether you want slavery or freedom. And then as you move a little bit more toward the right in this spectrum, you have then a Republican form of government, or a republic, constitutional republic like we're supposed to have in the United States, which we have nothing of the kind. And then you have forms of minarchism like libertarian, etc., classical conservatism and liberalism. And then, of course, all the way to the right is where I'm at, and that's pure anarchy, which does not mean chaos, which does not mean lawlessness. It does not mean immorality. It means no masters, no slaves. I don't believe in the slavery of human beings. I'm an abolitionist. That's the only moral position that there is when it comes to the control of other people. Other people shouldn't be placed in other people's control. Period. Even if they're doing something wrong, I don't believe in control. I believe in dealing with them, getting them out of the fucking world, quite frankly. I don't believe in imprisonment. I want all the prisons emptied. I want people to have to deal with all the bad people they created. That'll teach you to make good people. That'll teach you to teach people morality. It'll teach you to learn it yourself and teach it to others if you have a lot of bad people in your society. It should. Unfortunately, we're still not doing that. But I don't think prisons teach that lesson. Prisons just try to sanitize your society and not get you to understand you made those bad people. Parents in this society made those bad people who we're trying to put in jail and keep away from the rest of society. You're not learning anything that way by doing that. You're not even protecting anybody by doing that, because it gives rise to a whole new breed of corruption and corrupt people who want to go into the positions where they're in power over people who are caged. Fuck prisons. Fuck the prison system. Fuck the people who run them. You're garbage. You're just as much garbage as the people on the inside, because you're immoral trash. Because you're all about control, because you're fearful little fucking children in your psychology. That's all you are. You're a little child. I'm afraid of everything. Let's put these people away. We'll sanitize our society and it'll be safe for everybody. We'll reduce it to the level of a fucking little child who can't think, because that's what I am. That's what you sound like, moron. It's just what dumb people fucking sound like. You're just fucking dumb, son. You're just fucking dumb. That's all it is. You're dumb and immoral. And you're immoral because you're dumb. That's why. You've been dumbed down by this fucking system. You won't acknowledge it. You won't fucking set it right by learning something. Only anarchists can be good people. Only true anarchists can be good people. The amount of good people in the world are the amount of anarchists, of true anarchists that are in the world. And there's a lot of fake ones that call themselves that, and that doesn't make them a good person. And even just saying that you're an anarchist and believing in that there should be no coercion and slavery in the world through government doesn't even necessarily make you a truly good person. You could still fall from the spiritual path and not really live a good moral life, even though you say you agree with those principles. So there's even less truly good people in the world than there are true anarchists in the world. So on this political spectrum, I am infinity to the right. Infinity to the right. I don't believe in any government institutions. It's all claims of ownership, which is claims of being a slave owner and that you legitimately own other people. I don't care how you want to justify it. I don't care what services you say government provides. I don't care what you justify it by. It's slavery through coercion, whereby free will choice is removed, and that is violence. So if you're a believer in violence, go fuck yourself. I don't want anything to do with you as a fucking human being. You are somebody who wants to get things done by way of violence. Now, I just said I'd rather clean up the world of the bad people who want to do violence to other people. That's self-defense. Let all the fucking really bad people out of the prisons, release them back into the communities that created them, and let the communities deal with them. That would be justice. That would be justice. You have a little bit of time to repent and reform from your vile, evil, violent fucking ways. And if you don't, we're taking you out of the world. That's it. Because you can't stay here. We love you at a soul level, but you can't stay here. That's how I think everything should be dealt with. That's it. I'd say give them a little bit of time not to continue to do those things, but if they're shown to continue to do them, they got to go. Very simple. It's a very simple approach that is common sense, actually. The problem is people are too chicken shit cowards to deal with it like that. That's the problem. They don't understand the self-defense principle. So they want to have that sanitized and sequestered. Sequester them. We'll sequester them from our society and we'll make our society safe that way. You're such jackass, lowlife, dumb fucks. It's just unfathomable that you could be that dumb. Anybody who believes in that bullshit. You're just played. You're played. Your owners played you. They have your mind. They look at you as an even bigger of a fucking joke than I do. And I think you're a big fucking joke. And your owners just look at you as an infinitely bigger fucking joke. Because you do it to your own kind. You believe your own kind should be enslaved. You believe you should be enslaved. What kind of a fucking piece of dirt trash thinks that way? And that's how your owners think about you. They don't think about that way for themselves. They think about that way from you because they look at you as a fucking dumb animal. As a dumb fucking animal. And you know how many people can't hear this? They can't hear it. They can't comprehend it. They're too dumb to even understand what I'm saying. That's how fucking dumb they are. They can't even comprehend this at a mental level at all. And their owners know that. That's why they likened him to a stupid fucking animal that deserves extermination. And that's what most people really are. Problem is I'm swept up in that net. And I'm not a stupid fucking animal like other people. See, that's my problem. That's where I have a moral problem with it. You want to remove me from that equation, it still makes what you're doing wrong. But I'm not even removed from that equation. I'm swept up in that fucking garbage net. You know? And other good people are as well. That's why I have a moral problem with it. Anybody who's not a real anarchist right now, you got to seriously fucking re-examine your life. You got to seriously re-examine your beliefs. You got to seriously do serious shadow work upon your psyche. Because there's something deeply traumatized you and you're fucked up mentally and emotionally. That's the problem. See, I may have gone through a lot of trauma, but I'm not fucked up completely as a result of it. I'm dealing with it to the extent that my mind is still okay, to the extent that it knows the difference between right and wrong. It has come to the accurate conclusion of that. I'm not in such fear that I'm a believer in this bullshit religion called government. I'm not a fucking cult member. The people who believe in it, you're a fucking cult member. You're a fucking cult member. And you don't want to acknowledge that. You don't want to acknowledge that you're a fucking cult member because of your beliefs. But that's exactly what you are. I don't care how minarchist you believe in it. If you believe in coercion and violence and slavery, you're a fucking cult member. You're a brainwashed fucking cult member. So this political spectrum is a little bit more realistic. And one could look at it like this. It would be somewhat accurate. But it still ignores the most important factors when it comes to what manifests in our world, which is consciousness and morality determine that. How much do we really know? How much knowledge do we have? How much awareness of ourselves and our surroundings do we have? And how much do we know about true objective morality, the objective difference between right behavior and wrong behavior? Because, see, if the more and more you believe in government, the more you believe in wrong behavior. You believe in violence. You believe in coercion. You believe in slavery. All wrongdoings. No one has the right to enact those behaviors on any others. That's immorality. That's transgressions against natural law. Those are the true 7 deadly sins: murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and deception. Not pride, gluttony, sloth, lust, anger, jealousy, greed. Those are the fake 7 deadly sins, just like we have the fake political spectrum. This is more accurate to the political spectrum, but it leaves out two important dynamics: consciousness and morality. So let's look at what the real political spectrum is. It's people who believe in government, who believe in different gradations of government, which is just about everywhere, right? See, I'm just taking this and I'm creating a new dimension to it to make it a mathematical function instead of just a line. And yes, there's only one spot on this current, right over here, this current political spectrum, right? There's only one spot on it that represents freedom, and that's all the way to the right at anarchism. That dot is the only place that represents freedom on that spectrum. Similarly, there's only one place that represents freedom on my political spectrum that I've invented. But I take this graph and I mirror it. I take the anarchist thing and I make it an asymptotal curve. Okay? It's like a parabolic or exponential curve. And then I mirror it about the x-axis, which is directly in the middle on my chart. So let's take a look at this, and it will look a little bit busy, maybe a little confusing at first, but I'm going to break it down for people. I've done this before, but I think it's very valuable to reiterate it. And I've a little bit reworked the graph as well to make it even more clear what this represents. So this is the real political spectrum, and it is a function of consciousness and morality. Now, by definition, what a mathematical function is, okay, it is basically a graph by which there is only one y value for any given x coordinate. So you have the x coordinate is the horizontal axis that goes across horizontally, and then the y axis goes up and down vertically. Okay? So the x axis here is labeled as the amount of external government based on coercion and violence. The amount of external government based on coercion and violence. So we're not talking about government in the sense of I can control myself. I own my thoughts, emotions, and actions, and I govern them. That's not what we're talking about. So that is a form of government. That's the only true form of government, is self-governance. We're not talking about that on this chart on the x-axis. It's the amount of externally imposed government that is based in coercion and violence, the imposition of human will on others through violence and coercion. That's slavery. And there's only one place that represents the absence of that, the 0 point in the middle. Then as we go away from the 0 point in both directions, the amount of externally imposed government grows. Okay? And consciousness gets lower and lower and lower. At the very top, the peak, that's the place of peak consciousness. Because what we are plotting a function against this vertical line. Okay? So the vertical axis is the amount of consciousness, understanding of objective morality, and respect for self-ownership that is present in the aggregate in all of society. So once again, let me repeat that. The vertical line represents the amount of consciousness, which is the ability to recognize patterns and meaning with respect to events taking place both within the self and in this realm, the realm in which the self exists and operates. That's our definition of consciousness from way back in show number 1 or 2. Okay? So, again, this vertical axis represents the amount of consciousness, understanding of objective morality, and respect for self-ownership present in society. So as that goes up, right, as it goes up to that peak, we have 0 externally imposed government. So as consciousness goes up, as consciousness rises in society in the aggregate, we have less and less and less government. So this function is a function of consciousness and morality. As consciousness goes up, government is swinging exponentially to the 0 point. As it goes down, okay, as it swings down asymptotically, exponentially, we have more and more externally imposed government. So on that horizontal axis 0, no government, anarchy. As we go out to the sides, totalitarianism, all the way out to the extremes of left and right. So we see left totalitarianism, communism on the left side of the graph. Socialism a little bit to the right of that. A republic based on classical liberalism to the right of that. To the right of that, a form of minarchism, left-wing libertarianism, you could call it. Left-leaning libertarianism. And then on the right-hand side, we start with the totalitarianism of fascism. Just another word for slavery, just like communism is. And then as we go a little to the left of that, we have crony capitalism, which is pretty much, we're in a mixture now of socialism and crony capitalism. So if you had to say where is the world basically on the graph today, or where is the United States in particular, it would be at the point right here. I'll bring my mouse over here and circle it. We'd be here and here. So we'd be at that point, crony capitalism mixed with socialism, and rapidly heading toward a mixture of communism and fascism. So we're here and sliding all the way into totalitarianism. When where we need to be is here, which is when consciousness is enlightened and moral, as opposed to being unconscious and immoral. And that is the only place in the graph that represents true freedom or anarchy, the state of there being no masters and no slaves. The true state of freedom. This is the real political spectrum. And if anybody tries to tell you that it really is any other way, they're either stupid or lying, because this is actually the real political spectrum. I'm calling it the real political spectrum, not a imagined variant or a guess or my opinion of the real political spectrum. This is how it really works. Now, you could take this graph and fold it on the 0 line and just mirror one side to the other. Doesn't matter which way you mirror it. It would represent the same thing. Okay? Communism and fascism are basically the same in their results if they vary in their methods. Okay? They vary in their political ideology a little bit and in their methods, but you get the same results. Death camps, no rights, no private property, etc. Government is God. Government is the religion of all society. You can mirror it, and like I said, we're at the point where we're basically at a mixture of socialism and crony capitalism. A true constitutional republic would be a mixture of classical liberalism and classical conservatism, which would exist in a state of balance, which we couldn't stay in for even over 200 years, less than 200 years. And then libertarianism would look very similar as a form of minarchy, whether it is slightly left-leaning or slightly right-leaning. But there's only one place that represents true freedom, where individual rights are respected, where self-ownership is respected, where there is high level of enlightened consciousness throughout society, and there is an understanding of objective morality, a correct understanding of objective morality throughout society in the aggregate. That's that 0 point. That's what we have to get to. And I deliberately depicted it as this very precarious, precipitous thing where if you go off of it by a hair, you could easily slope down into totalitarianism. It's supposed to depict how difficult it is to reach and maintain that state because of how much total mind control there is, out in society, and how dumb people are, and how easily leaning toward one political form of dialectic or the other they are. Wanting to pick a master, wanting to pick a political party. Just totally easy pickings for mind control dialectics, for polarization dialectics. When are people going to learn, folks?